Good morning. Thank you for joining us. And I'm Bill Smurray. And today I'm doing a podcast with Jim Moloney. And Jim Moloney is the curator of the Riverview Park Zoo in Peterborough. I'm also with my production assistant, David Helene. Thanks for coming in, Jim.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in here. Sorry I was late this morning, but we can talk about that some other time. So, I usually start these off. Tell us about who Jim Moloney is, like if you don't mind, your family, your background, where were you educated, that sort of thing.
Sure. So I'm actually a long-term resident of Peterborough. I grew up in Peterborough.
Were you born here?
I was.
Okay.
So I actually grew up not too far from the Park and Zoo, as luck would have it. I was on the corner of Algonquin and Arcadia Court.
You live over there, David?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was walking distance from the zoo, and in fact, when I was young, I used to, back in those days, kids used to go and kind of do their own thing. I used to spend a lot of my summer time over at the zoo.
That'd be a great place to hang out.
It was.
Yeah. And it wasn't fenced back then.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
you
okay.
pretty much roam at your will.
Yeah.
So grew up in the North End, attended Adam Scott High School. Following that, I went to Fleming College and took a degree in engineering technology, or not a degree, a diploma in engineering technology there.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is interesting.
It
engineering technology and now zoo curator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's join the dots here. This will be fun.
I'll definitely come back to that for sure. Basically, I took the electromechanical program at Fleming, which in those days they called the robotics program.
Wow, okay.
And ended up working for about 22 or 23 years in the electrical instrumentation and engineering fields. Mm-hmm. For a variety of different organizations. I started out with the federal government's Measurement Canada division.
Did you go place to place and checking gauges or checking weight scales and that sort
Well, it was like that, but I worked with gas meters and electricity meters.
Okay.
So we did some in situ inspections, but I did a lot of work in what they called back in those days meter shops.
Okay.
So all the utilities would bring their meters in on a regular basis, clean them up, calibrate them, and then as an inspector, I would come in and test them and seal them.
Okay.
Yeah. And Peterborough Utilities used to have a meter shop back in those days. I ended up working for a small service company in Belleville that provided metering services to probably about 100 utilities around central and eastern Ontario at that time. Okay. Then I came back to Peterborough and started working for Moltronics. And Moltronics was in those days essentially an instrumentation company as well. I worked for them for about seven and a half years and joined Peterborough Utilities back in 1997. And then worked in the engineering department at the utilities for 10 years.
Okay. It's quite a career so far.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
It's very interesting, actually.
So I was out of town for, I guess, 11 or 12 years, but came back to Peterborough in 97 and have been at the utilities ever since. But things, as you kind of alluded to, took kind of a strange turn about 7 years ago, not quite 7 years ago. The gentleman who was the manager and curator of the Park and Zoo at that time was retiring. And the utilities had done a bunch of recruiting for about 6-8 months. And they hadn't found that person who was a really good fit. Now, they were asking for a lot. They were looking for somebody who was familiar with animal care and animal health, and somebody who knew parks, and somebody who was good with the public and the media, and they just didn't find somebody they were quite looking for. And I was working in the engineering department at the time, and
at the PUC?
At the Peterborough Utilities, yeah. And the gentleman who is the VP of the water utility, the zoo's part of the water utility, called me into his office one day, and I'm scratching my...
What did I do wrong?
What the heck have I done now?
Yeah, I know.
And he said to me, Jim, Jack's retiring next spring. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And he says, I've just been up in human resources, and we were talking about options. And we thought that maybe you might be a really good fit for this job. And I went, what?
What?
Anyway, so he went on to explain that, when they evaluated what they really wanted, they wanted somebody who was a good administrator, somebody who could deal with the public, somebody that was comfortable with the media, could manage budgets and projects and that kind of stuff. And the expertise around animal husbandry and animal health, they had great staff with lots of experience that could take care of that. Wayne said to me, if you're interested, and I went, of course I'm interested, but I really...
It's a new challenge. What do you got?
Do you really think I can do this? Because I wasn't confident, And he said, well, why don't you go talk to Jack? So I went up, and Jack and I went for lunch, and we had a conversation about it. And he said, well, Jim, if you really think about it, 14 years ago, I started this job. I'd never managed people, never been a supervisor. I had a 2-week overlap with my predecessor. And he said,
that was it.
I've made out okay. He said, you'll be fine. We're going to have a good long overlap. You'll be fine. As it turned out, I wasn't fine. The first few years were really bumpy. And it's taken me a long time to even learn, kind of a basic understanding around the animal husbandry and animal health side of things. But it's been incredibly rewarding at the same time as being challenging. It's just been wonderful.
Tell us, I don't know if you know, but I'm going to ask you, the zoo, the beginnings of the zoo.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to, I've lived in Peterborough for 30 years, and we've been going to the zoo off and on for 30 years, but I know nothing about what was the actual beginnings of the zoo.
It's really an amazing story, and it's a fun story. And it's pretty well documented in the archives of the zoo's records. And a fair bit of it's actually documented in the Peterborough Examiner. So back in 1933...
Oh, this is getting back.
This is a year or two ago. Back in 1933, there was no zoo, but the water treatment plant was up there. The water plant's been up there for a very long time. The gentleman who was the manager of Peterborough Utilities at the time, or president and CEO actually, his name was Ross Dobbin. And he went to Florida to attend a water treatment conference. And while he was there, one of the delegates from Florida gave him a present. And you might think a business conference, maybe a new tie or a briefcase or something like that. No, what he actually received was a gift of 2 baby American alligators.
Oh, trouble.
And we actually have a photo of Mr. Dobbin in front of the water plant holding these 2 baby American alligators in his 3-piece suit with his hat. So he brought the alligators back to Peterborough, and at that time there was a big ornamental fountain that sat right between the plant and Water Street. And he put the alligators in this fountain and told the guys who worked at the plant to take care of the alligators. So people in the community heard there were alligators at the water treatment plant.
And here they go.
And started to visit.
Sure.
Then, and I don't know why or how this happened, over the next 7 years, they ended up acquiring an orphaned bear cub, injured doe, a bunch of waterfowl, and then a merchant sailor came back to Peterborough and brought with him what he called a Rhodesian monkey. And as they acquired these animals, they set up these kind of tiny ramshackle cages around the old monkey house building. Mm-hmm. And the more animals they had there, the more that people in the community were coming to visit the water plant. So in the 1960s, there were enough people coming to visit the property, and they were spending enough time and resources managing this little collection that the utilities actually made it official, created Riverview Park and Zoo as a department in the utilities. Mm-hmm. The city recognized the property as a park in the city, and they were able, with an act of provincial parliament, to enshrine park and zoo funding in the water rates.
Okay.
So that's why we're able to offer this wonderful free admission facility.
We're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, because we are permitted to use a small percentage of the city's water revenue, or not the city's, sorry, the utilities' water revenue to fund the park and zoo.
Oh, I don't personally like paying taxes. I know it's a necessity, but yeah, that's money towards a zoo. I mean, that's because, well, let's explore this more. I drove by the zoo, well, I go by the zoo every day almost because that's where I live, up in that area. On the weekends, it's just packed. Now getting into the summer season, it's going to be packed. Part of the thing is the free admission to the zoo. And the water park, I mean, for the kids, I mean, the water park. Let's talk more about that sort of thing. Excuse me, I have to put my glasses on and I can't see. But activities for the kids. Like families come down.
Yep.
They can picnic. They've got all sorts of activities for the kids. And we'll talk about the train later.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, free admission is one of the things that certainly the current management of the utilities and me personally, we're very committed to. And in fact, accessibility in all meanings of the word is one of our core values for the park and zoo. And I think in addition to, accessibility from a physical perspective, the accessibility to people from all backgrounds, irrespective of maybe their financial situation, is really important to us as well. And I see that with individuals on a regular basis when I'm at the zoo. But one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that there are a lot of support organizations in the Peterborough community that bring their clientele to the zoo on a regular basis because it's something that they can go out and do and it doesn't hit their budget.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, and
it's as a healing thing.
It is, and we see them over and over again, and it's just wonderful. We're very fortunate, and I think the people in our community take us for granted a little bit. It's the people who come from outside our community that can't believe we offer it for free. And just to put things in
so many times, Jim. Sorry. Yeah.
To put things in perspective, we're one of only 4 accredited zoos in Canada, in the United States, that are free admission, and we're the only one in Canada.
That was a question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the train.
The train.
I love the train.
I
haven't been in the train for years, but adults love it, getting on the train, but they have to have an excuse. They have to have somebody little with them, right? So they can take care of that little person, and then they jump on the train. And the adults love it as much as the kids. But, yeah.
It's funny that you say that. Over the last 3 years, we've had this big project where we've been rebuilding the tracks and all the grading and everything, replaced all the ties. And the guys who did that work, the construction guys, all wanted to go for a train ride. So we took them for a train ride. There were no kids involved. But I love the train. I'm a bit of a railway geek, actually. I've got a model rail set at the house.
So do I.
And
I'll have to see your railway.
Anyway, and I've been fascinated with the railway history of the area. So the train has spoken to me a lot over the years as well. But the train actually was purchased back in 1974. At that time, the locomotive and cars were used. It runs every year, typically from Victoria Day weekend to Labor Day weekend, 7 days a week from 10 in the morning till 6 at night. Last year we had about 77,000 riders. And, for the park and zoo, it's an important revenue source for us.
There is an admission for the train.
Yeah, it's $2 a person presently. And that really helps us out from an operating cost perspective. I cannot overstate what a fantastic job the city garage, the public works garage, does of maintaining that train for us. They're just fantastic. It has a 1951 Willys Jeep engine in it. They're finding parts is impossible. And these guys do an amazing job of keeping that train.
I did
running.
know that's interesting.
Yeah,
the old 4-cylinder Willys Jeep.
A flathead Willys Jeep engine. Yeah.
I don't know. This is a question I've often wondered. The number. Do you have any idea how many people go through that zoo every year?
Yeah, we kind of do some reverse engineering from a statistics perspective. So we know how many people ride the train because we have hard numbers on that. And every summer we do an ongoing survey of our visitors. And one of the questions we ask them is, did you ride the train today? Or how many people in your party rode the train today? And from that, we can kind of reverse estimate for the summer months what our visitorship is. And the last few years, the estimate is over 250,000 visitors.
250,000 people.
Yeah.
I wonder, is the city, or does anybody know what kind of estimate what kind of revenue that brings into Peterborough?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's really had
you can't actually nail that down. I wouldn't, but there must be some sort of an estimate.
Yeah, and I know they do that for other events and things like that.
Are people coming in and going to restaurants and just stopping in the store or something, buying gas?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But that's not the main point here. But yeah, it's the zoo itself. It's so wonderful. So I want to ask you. So we talked originally about you coming in here maybe 3 weeks ago.
Yes. And
you said at that time, Bill, I can't come in until today because there's so much going on. What was going on? Well, I've been dying to ask you this question because I thought we asked Jim he's all these time ago, come on in. He said, no, I'm too busy. I'll come. So what exactly was going on?
So last week was kind of, the week before last was kind of a bit of a perfect storm for us. We host the Children's Water Festival every summer. It's mostly organizations done by Peterborough Greenup. But the setup, while things are on the go and the tear down for us, it's a big commitment on the part of Park and Zoo staff. So the water festival actually ran for 3 days. I think they had close to 2,500 students, and I think I heard about 400 volunteers. I know the Park and Zoo staff were very busy and a big part of setting everything up and tearing it down and keeping things going while that was on the go. That same week, we're also in the middle of our final preparations for the Park and Zoo Fun Run,
we were going to get to that too,
which happened on the following Saturday. So we actually ended up with 429 registered runners. We had to put together individualized race kits for every runner with a bib and a shirt and everything. So those evenings, we were packing race kits, and then we were handing out race kits early. So that whole week was rather active for staff at the Park and Zoo. And it just tends to be a busy time of year for us in general as we're trying to get everything up and running and ready for the summer season.
Sorry for interrupting. Activities like the Fun Run.
Yes.
Now, I understand it was a huge success.
Yes.
I heard there was people that were going to the zoo. They didn't know what this Fun Run was even going on, and they were just taken in with this. They just thought it was wonderful, right? And they were like that. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't advertised enough, or not, but people were coming in. I think there would have been more people if they had known. But
yeah, and that's one of our challenges. We are very active in social media, and the local newspapers have been wonderful about supporting us and providing coverage for our activities and that kind of stuff. But being a free admission park and zoo, we don't have a marketing group. We don't really have an advertising budget as such. So we need, when we're doing things like this, our only option is to try and get the word out kind of from a natural word of mouth or through social media, or like I say, the Examiner and Peterborough This Week have always been very good about sharing information for us. But paid advertising, it's just not.
It's not really, in the budget.
No.
And talking about activities, on June the 8th, there was a turtle walk.
Well, the Turtle Walk is an interesting thing. There's a series of them through the summer, and they had the June the 8th one start at the Park and Zoo, but it's actually not something that's organized by us. What we will do, however, is whenever there's an event like that, or the Peterborough Field Naturalists are doing something, or the Ontario Turtle Trauma Center is doing something, Turtle Conservation Center, we love to share their information. So the Turtle Walk people actually sent us all their promotional material, and we put it on our webpage and on our social media pages because we believe in what they're trying to do.
So do I.
Yeah.
I actually rescued a snapping turtle last weekend.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, off a back road.
Yeah.
Can I ask? We're talking about a lot of these events. What sort of ratio of events to sort of regular day to day is the zoo? Like, is it mostly events is your role, or is it more like regular maintenance with the occasional event?
I like my own job personally, or just staff in general.
Well, I mean, like I guess sort of the group. Like what is the initiative, right? Is it you have these X number of employees and they do this. Is most of the time, between the group of you working on these events and things like this, or is it mostly sort of just running the day to day?
I would say almost all of our time is spent on the day to day stuff. I'll clarify that a little bit. The fun run, for example, there's a committee of volunteers that do the organization of that. And I'm on that committee, and so most of that work happens after hours in the evenings, that kind of stuff, until it gets close to event day. On event day, we had a few extra staff in to try and help out, and the day before the event, we were putting out extra picnic tables and barricades and garbage cans and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, that event has been put together by the volunteers. One of the challenges we have at the Park and Zoo is we have a small staff. We have 9.5 staff. We have a part-time staff member. We have 4.5 animal care staff that take care of about 160 animals. They have to be taken care of every day of the year.
Yes.
So if you spread those 4.5 people over 7 days of the week, considering the fact that some of the animals get fed 4 times a day, every animal gets seen every day, every exhibit gets cleaned every day, all the dishes. Today, for example, we're also doing animal health, so every animal gets a checkup and an examination. So there'll be staff, in addition to their normal stuff today, that will be darting and sedating the yaks up in the yak exhibit. They'll get a full physical. They may trim their hooves, take blood work, preventative medication. The animal care staff tend to be really busy. That's a very full plate. Likewise, we have 2 people who work in the park, and they're responsible for clearing snow, building maintenance, pathway maintenance. This time of year it's a little different because we had a bunch of students to help us, but the staff have, just with the regular stuff, tend to have their plates very full. Some of the things like the water festival, they fall into our mandate for public education. And education is a very important part of what we do. Last year, I think we had about 1,100 students that came in for formal education programming.
And this time of year, you see school buses.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think last Monday or Tuesday, we counted 12 school buses that showed up. We have every one of our education program slots in June is completely booked and has been booked for months. So the Water Festival is a really good fit for that. It talks about conservation, talks about water safety. There's a bunch of different avenues that they talk about there. So that's a really good fit and matches our own education programming. So to come back in full circle, almost all of our time is spent kind of with the regular day-to-day operation and maintenance.
So if you're doing all these events and everything, like I know like high school kids are required to do this sort of mandated community service, this kind of thing. Do you guys rely on volunteers, or do you have volunteer stuff that people can help out with it, or is it more too technical for sort of a volunteer to walk in and help out?
So we do have a formal volunteer program that has an ongoing group of volunteers that support, and most of the work they do is for the education programming. However, we will also recruit volunteers specifically for an event. So we had a fantastic group of volunteers that helped us out with the fun run on the day of the run. I think the water festival had, between high school students and adult volunteers, had something like 400 people come and help them deliver the content for the water festival over the period of the 3 days. Volunteers are a really critical part of us being able to deliver our education program.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks. How many volunteers would you estimate you have?
Throughout the year right now, I would say we're probably running around 45, 48. We have a group that tends to be very active during the school year, and then we have a different group that tends to come in for the summer season. We end up with a lot of high school students in the summer season, and our regular kind of class type programming isn't as active through the summer. Okay. So the people who helped us deliver that through the winter tend to take the summer off.
Let's talk about the number of exhibits.
Yes.
We have, I believe it's a 55-acre park.
Yeah, the maintained grounds are about 55 acres, and that kind of little fenced-in area in the middle of the park, the actual zoo, is about 11 acres.
Okay.
So we're a relatively small facility when it comes to
zoo itself,
zoos. Yeah. I think right now we probably have 27 exhibits and approximately 45 species that are represented. Right now we've got some animals that you're not as likely to see because of some renovations that we're doing, and again I can talk to that a little bit. But in general, most of our animals are on exhibit every day of the year, able to be seen every day of the year. Now, sometimes we do have visitors who say, hey, I came and I didn't get to see this animal, or I didn't get to see the otters, and they were disappointed. And, one of the things I really like about our zoo is because we're free admission, because people can come back as many times as they want, we don't feel organizationally any pressure to make sure that the animals are at the front of the exhibit, kind of on display. Almost every one of our animals, almost every day of the year, has the choice to sit in the back corner under a bush or go back into its holding or its house or building and sleep the day away. And, from a ethical perspective, that makes me feel really good. The animal has choice. If it doesn't want to be in front of the people, it doesn't have to be.
The animal can come and go as it wants.
And we'll do things to encourage the animal to come out and be active so people get an opportunity to see it. But, we typically are not locking the animals out in front of the public. And we don't feel the need to do that. Every day we have our little routines, so especially with the dangerous animals, and we have a few dangerous animals, the animals get used to a routine where in the morning we'll if they're outside, we'll lock them outside and we'll clean inside, and we'll put some food inside, and then we'll open the doors and they'll come in, then we'll lock them inside so we can clean outside, those types of things. But in general, they have the choice of coming and going as they will.
The fun run.
Yes.
I understand it was to raise money for the meerkats.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the...
I love meerkats. I think everybody loves meerkats.
They're very engaging and a lot of fun. One of the things that's part of our long-term plan at the zoo is to move towards larger, better animal exhibits with fewer animals overall.
More space.
More space. And in general, what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the quality of the life for the animals. And certainly best practices today in 2019 are not the same as what was considered best practices back in 1986. And we have some exhibits that were built back in 1986 and really hadn't been changed much in between. So we have a long-term plan where we've been visiting a bunch of the exhibits to try and address these issues. And right now we have completely gutted the indoor meerkat exhibit. We're in the process of making it about 2.5 times as big as it used to be. When we're done, it will look a lot more naturalistic inside. And there's a few different reasons for this. In addition, just to improving their quality of life in general, the new exhibit should promote more naturalistic behavior. The meerkats are in fact part of what we call a species survival plan, which means there's a bunch of different zoos in North America that hold meerkats, and we have a breeding program for them with the intent that we maintain a genetically diverse captive population.
Yes. Great.
So that if there's an opportunity in the future where we have somewhere where they can be protected, you can actually take these animals and reintroduce them to the wild. And there's a bunch of different of these SSPs, as we call them, that accredited zoos all around North America, and in fact
Yes.
Europe participate in. And the sandhill crane and the black-footed ferret out west, there are actual active programs to reintroduce these species to areas in the wild where they've been completely extirpated. So the meerkats kind of fall into this. And the larger exhibit will do a couple things. We think it'll better promote breeding, and we've had good breeding success in the past, but it will also help us better manage the offspring when they're born. The new facilities will allow us to segregate them somewhat and give everybody more space.
So, I've been dying to ask this question. A typical day in the life of Jim Moloney today, for instance. I mean, after this sort of thing, what do you do?
Well,
I know we went over this generally, but just to sort of nail it down.
So there's this old military phrase that says no plan survives contact with the enemy, and honestly I feel that's what my days are like. Every morning.
I've never heard that. Who said that?
I'm not sure who it's attributed to.
Napoleon or somebody?
Yeah, but on a given morning we may have a plan for the day, and it never seems to come to fruition. And a good example is on Friday we had 5 different children who lost their parents. So we had children who came into guest services or approached somebody and had lost their parents. And Friday was a very busy day at the zoo. The zoo was full of people. And that's just an example. We could have been in the middle of an important meeting or something. When we have a lost child, we drop everything. Every staff member stops what they're doing, and we go out and comb the zoo until we are able to put people back together.
5 of them.
5 of them in one day.
That's pretty. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Is that normal?
It's very common. Lost child, lost parent is a very common thing for us. I would say during the busy part of the season, we'll have at least 1 or 2 a week, at least.
But 5 a day is...
5 in a day was a special day.
Yeah.
But there can be different things. But in general, in the summertime, I spend most of my time providing staff with support. So we have 19 students this summer doing a bunch of different things.
19 people running around.
Yeah. And, our full-time staff each are responsible for students here and there, but we don't have an office staff really other than myself and the supervisor, the Park and Zoo supervisor. So, even the public coming to the office or deliveries or that kind of stuff don't get a lot of time during the meat of the day to do kind of regular administrative stuff. And there's a lot of administrative stuff from, things like timesheets and schedules and purchase orders and approving invoices, all those types of things that are normal business things. And that's really the meat of my responsibilities, is more that administrative side of things. But the other side of things is that in the fall or the spring or the winter, if we get a load of hay in, on any given day there's only 5 or 6 of us at work. You're probably going to throw hay onto the elevator and help put it up into the,
that's on the schedule,
into the barn, because there's only that many of you around. Or if you're trying to catch a reindeer up because the vet needs to have a look at it, you're in the reindeer exhibit trying to corral the reindeer into the...
You certainly have a fascinating job.
It's a wonderful job, and what ends up happening on any given day.
Thanks for coming, because I did have no idea. And that's why I really wanted you to come in, because I don't think Jim Moloney's a zoo curator. What is that?
Exactly.
Fascinating.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, but every day sounds exciting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. But even more so than that, it's probably, well, it is. It's the most rewarding job I've ever had.
Yeah,
you know.
you look pretty happy.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a good.
Yeah.
Yeah. David, do you want to ask Jim?
Yeah. Well, so I had a couple that came up. One was, you mentioned the vet, and you mentioned you having the sort of people who are like primarily responsible for caring for the animals. Is this like, do you have a vet? Like, are these 4 people vets?
So we have 4 zookeepers, one of which is what we call our animal health tech. So actually we have 3 staff members of our own staff who are veterinary technicians. And then we have a few consulting veterinarians, one primary one who's at the zoo at least every other week, and more often if there's something going on. So he'll come and do rounds every other week, but like this week he's coming to do rounds on Wednesday. He's at the Park and Zoo today to assist with the annual health checkups for the yaks. And if we had a sick animal, he'd be around as much as he needed. In order to have some backup, we have another consulting veterinarian who helps us out as well. But we also have a contract with one of the local clinics. And there's, I think, 3 vets there who can help us out as needed. So we don't have our own veterinarian on staff, but 3 vet techs.
This is like if you spent years working on cats and dogs and birds and hamsters, you don't go to caring for camels, right? Like,
no,
it's got to be like a farmer, like a farm veterinarian or something like that, right? Or
yeah, and we're very fortunate in that our primary veterinarian, Dr. John Soloway, he's been helping us out at the zoo, I think, for like 35 years or something. Oh, wow. So like he's just fantastic. The other veterinarian who helps us out regularly is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Michael Cranfield, and he's actually at the Baltimore Zoo.
Oh.
So he's got a fantastic background as well. He's a Peterborough boy, so he'll actually come back to town and help us with a bunch of our animal health care, probably a couple times a year. And one of the things we've started recently is we've started to have this contract with this other organization, and they've started to rotate their vets in, and they've come up and started to job shadow to bring them up to speed. But you're absolutely right. When you're dealing with a camel or like a alligator,
sure,
it's a very different set of knowledge that you have to have, and not just the medical side, the behavior side of things as well.
Yeah.
A good example. I had no idea when I started at the zoo how dangerous the otters were.
Oh.
Like of all of they're
because of bacteria or like
no, because they are incredibly unfriendly.
They're cute to look at.
They are cute and they look so playful, but we never go in with our otters ever.
Oh.
We'll go in with the camels, but the otters, the Sichuan takin, there are a few of the animals that are just too aggressive and dangerous. Yeah.
Everybody looks at the otters. They're so cute.
Absolutely, and it's kind of one of the few things that keep me up at night is the thought. I could imagine some bored people after dark one night thinking it might be fun to go and have a swim with the otters.
Go and pet them.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
and it would be very bad. It would be very bad. We have security and we have the gates, and actually the otter exhibit has electric fencing around it.
You can only do so much.
But if somebody were to get in there, I think it would be
if somebody's that determined.
Scary. Yes. Yeah.
They're gonna,
So I try and tell people, you know what, the otters are really cute and they're fun to watch, but no, you wouldn't want to go in to try and pet one.
Yeah.
It's great having
it.
It
would be
no
bad.
idea. So I'm not going to go with it. Never. Forget that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the other question, well, I have 2 other ones. One is like, so you mentioned this starts in like the 30s, right? And this guy gets the crocodile or the alligator or whatever. What's sort of the evolution like? There seems to be like different things that are always popular, right? Like the otter. The otters are like a place where you go, and when I took my girls when they were really young, there's that big slide, right? And it was always like, oh, we want to go on the slide, and then it was the tire swing for a long time, and then I understand now that there's a new sort of accessible swings for people who are in wheelchairs, and there's things like this, and so what sort of progression, like how do you go from having two alligators or crocodiles in a in sort of park area to having this sort of infrastructure in place where different people are enjoying different things, and how does that grow over the years?
So I think over the years, how that's happened has really changed. I think the early years, everything was kind of happenstance, and it was just whatever they could slap together quickly. And literally, we still have buildings at the zoo that were built by the zookeepers and that have, bicycle frames in the concrete as reinforcing rod, and literally things along those lines. But more recently, during Jack's time and Wally's time, things had a much more planned progression to them. And that's evidenced in some of the major improvements that have been made during their times as curator. You think about that wonderful large primate building we now have in the middle of the zoo, that we moved all the animals from the monkey house up to there. A fantastic facility. You talk about the otter exhibit, the animal health center that we have now. One of the key things that's important to understand is that we have this wonderful base funding that we get from the utilities water rates, and that's why we're free admission. Like there's no way we'd be able to do this without that support from the utilities. But these larger improvements, the things that have taken us from little ramshackle things in an old building, these have been possible because of the support of the people of Peterborough. A gentleman by the name of Ray James made a very significant donation that allowed us to build the otter exhibit and the splash pad. That'd be about 11 years ago now, I think they were built. And you'll have to forgive me because I don't have the full list for me, but basically every single major improvement we've made at the zoo has been possible because of a major donor or because of a group of donors that got behind us. The wheelchair swing, that money was entirely raised by a local family to make that happen. The miniature train ride, we go all the way back to 1974. It's called the James Hamilton Train Ride because of a donation that was made to help bring that to fruition.
So the way that the zoo sort of does this is they look at, like, this is kind of things that we want to do, and then people say, hey, we think that would be really nifty, here's a couple million.
I'd love to have a couple million. That would be awesome. But yeah, some of the donations have approached those types of levels. But even some things like the Rotary Education Center where we run our classes now. It's called the Rotary Education Center because the Peterborough Rotary Club came in and gave us $100,000 towards that project.
Wow.
And, that wasn't enough to pay for the building, obviously. But when we actually went to tender, that building came in way over budget. And because they came and showed up with that money, that project proceeded. And it still might not be built today, 5 years later almost, if they hadn't come to the table. So we do have a long-term plan that includes not just facilities, but it talks about the exhibits and what we'd like to do with the animal collection as well, because they kind of tie hand in hand.
Right.
But the funding of making that happen can be challenging at times.
Yes.
So there is a long-term plan. Is this something that you guys publish, or is this sort of private to just internal, or?
No, it's not private at all, and it's something that is certainly the capital budget part of it is part of our annual budget process, which the Utilities Commission, that is all public information. And if anybody was interested to look at kind of the text wording of the long-term plan, it's open and available. Absolutely.
So just sort of to tail on that, what are sort of the new initiatives that the zoo's looking to do? Like what can we expect next from the zoo?
Yeah, so there's a few different things in the work. Right now, we're in the middle of, we talked about the meerkat exhibit. We have the front part of the cat exhibit where the servals are completely torn apart right now. Again, it's getting bigger by about 25%. Some new viewing windows and new pathways there. There's things that are exhibit specific, but we also finished about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, a complete evaluation of and had a long-term plan for the playground put together, mostly to address accessibility issues. One of the things that are challenging at the zoo is we have a lot of grade changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a local landscaping architect firm put together this fantastic long-term plan for the playground. So that's something that's in place, and we just put in some new playground equipment, did some work, and all the work we do for the next 8 to 10 years will be working to see that vision. That project by itself, it would probably be a $2 million project if we wanted to say, okay, let's do this today, and that we can't bite off chunks that big with our capital budget. But all the work we'll do in there for the next 8 to 10 years will be such that it'll move us in that direction. Likewise, there's some pathway improvements between the north end of the zoo, the main entrance, and on the way down to the train. We talked a little bit about the exhibits, fewer, better, bigger exhibits. I don't really have at this point a big signature new capital project that we're looking at this time. In the shorter term, we do have several exhibits that we really want to give a facelift. And that's something we started a couple of years ago. And it'll carry on at least for the next few years. I would say more of a focus on those improvements.
And so how does someone who would want to contribute to these projects, is this something, like, you guys aren't really a charity, this is like there has to be like a campaign or something, a fundraiser for this. It's not like someone says, I just write a check and mail it to you.
We actually get a lot of our donations, our unsolicited donations, and certainly Ray James, who provided the support for the otter exhibit and the splash pad, he walked into the office and just talked to Jack one day to say, hey, what are you guys doing? What's coming up? I want to help. And literally that's how that happened.
Wow.
We do from time to time do like capital campaigns to help us with projects. We did that for the new animal hospital back in 2011. We probably are going to be looking at doing something like that. We're actually going to be replacing the train locomotive in all the cars probably in 2021, 2022. We'll be looking for community support for that. But in general, we accept donations at any time, and donations can be just a donation for us to use as we see fit. We have something we call the Capital Reserve Fund, where we put a bunch of money in and let a pot build up until we're ready to do a larger capital project. Or sometimes we get donations where the donation is directed. So we've had a bunch of donations in addition to the money we raised at the fun run that are directed specifically towards that project to upgrade the Meerkat exhibit.
Right. So the other thing that you mentioned a few times throughout this sort of conversation is the mandate. And I was kind of curious what that mandate actually is.
Yeah, so again, without having it in front of me, because it fills most of a page.
Okay.
Basically, we have what we call our statement of purpose and guiding principles. And the statement of purpose and guiding principles includes things like the fact that we're dedicated to providing a good, positive, educational, but also entertainment experience for our guests. To being good stewards of the land that we're using on the Tonabee River there. We have a commitment to excellence in the welfare of our animals. We have a commitment to education programming of the public, and not just school groups, but the public at large. We have a commitment to conservation initiatives and supporting research. We have some great research partnerships with Trent University. We've had some research done by students, graduate students from McGill. There's a bunch of different things we've done along those lines. We don't have a large team, so the actual research we do ourselves in-house isn't big, but we do some. The commitment to accessibility is one of the things that's right in our principles as well. Just kind of shooting off the top of my head.
Yeah, so who decides the mandate?
So we have something that's called the Park and Zoo Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And basically it is a committee that includes representation of the public. So there's 4 members of the public that sit on the committee. So a lot of the times when we're looking at kind of these larger issues or overarching issues, the advisory committee will get involved, and we'll discuss and debate and that kind of stuff to come up with what we think is a good course of action. And the guiding principles and statement of purpose is a good example of this. And we've rehashed that at least once since I've been around. But the actual approval of that is done at the commission level. So our governance is done by Peterborough Utilities Commission.
Okay. Yes.
So it's like they do a lot of the funding, and they they have high expectations, but they deliver a lot to you. Because this mandate seems pretty. It sounds like you're committed to a lot of things, right? And like all these fantastic things. So it's just interesting to hear how a team that is so small, that is a free admission, and achieving all these things is pretty impressive.
I feel really, in addition just to having the opportunity to work at the Park and Zoo, I feel really blessed because of the team that I work with. I don't think anywhere that I've worked before have I met people who have such passion for their work.
It's a very nice thing to say, Jim.
They're just wonderful. Now I can tell you that one of the challenges is if you get 3 zookeepers in a room and ask them how to do something that's a black and white answer, you're going to get 3 different answers. And hardly defended and passionate answers. But it's a great problem to have, people who are so engaged and so caring. And in a lot of ways, I think the Park and Zoo, we bat above our weight. There are not many small accredited zoos anymore. It's not, the accreditation program is challenging. To be an active member in CASA, they have such high standards for ethics. It's a tough thing to do, especially for an organization that has modest resources. The community should be so proud of what our staff are able to accomplish.
That's fantastic.
Ask Jim anything else?
I'm good. I'm satisfied. I think this one's fantastic.
So do I. Very educational.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say about the zoo? Anything, Jim?
No, I just
Okay.
it's a privilege to be part of it.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm Bill Smurray, and I'd like to thank Jim Moloney, the curator of the Riverview Park and Zoo in Peterborough, and David Helene. Thanks for watching or listening, and by the way, we'd love to have you back.
Okay.
Whenever you feel you would like to come back, we'd love to have you back.
Sure, or if you like, I'd be happy to, if you'd want to talk things about the animal collection or something like that, we could have one of our animal care staff come back if you prefer that.
Would we do that at a zoo? Or would
you could come up to the education center. If you come to the education center, we could set up there, and we could probably pull out some critters even.
I'd love to do that. What do you think?
Not otters?
Not otters.
Not otters.
No
We'll
otters.
skip the otters.
No otter. That's a fantastic. So we'll be in touch, and
Okay.
maybe you could set that up in the next couple of months or something, or whenever
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Jim, for coming up, and thanks again, and goodbye for now.